Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Roddy Bergeron. I am a tech enthusiast slash cybersecurity cybernaut slash guy who looks good on camera sometimes when the lighting's right. Thank you for joining us today. We're here today to talk with some great vendors here who are going to take us on a journey through some trends and some foresight into what's going to be going on in our industry and what they think is going to be shaping our future. So whether or not you are a seasoned MSP or you're just getting into the game, I think we're going to have a little bit of something for everyone today, something for them to chew on, something for you to think about. So let's go ahead and dive right into today's webinar. First off, I'd like to introduce Mr. Charlie Tomeo with Roost. Charlie, if you can give us a little bit about yourself, your company, and give us some success stories we've had with Roost.
Sure, definitely been around for a while in the space, almost I think 25 years in the vendor space. The past 10 plus focused on MSPs. Was at WebRoot for the majority of those 25 years. Worked with you before, Roddy, as well, and joined Roost at the beginning of this year. Roost is an RPA, robotics processing automation platform. So basically, it gives you the ability to automate pretty much any process that you have today. So that's something that we're focused on, especially if anybody knows about RPAs. It's very focused on enterprise. We are definitely just focused on MSP. We have things like multi-tenancy, and we certainly have about 60 different integrations with the MSP vendors that you use every day. I'd say the biggest success stories for us, and they vary, depends on kind of, like you said, the big, the small, or the, I guess the more seasoned and mature MSPs compared to somebody just getting started is just time savings. So we have somebody that just came on board, used pre-existing what we call crates, which are pre-built automations. In the first month, they saved 500 hours.
Awesome, man. That's good. Especially on the MSP side, we're always trying to figure out how I hate to use the word efficient, but how effective we can be. The more effective we can be, saving some time and money, the better. Thanks, Charlie, for introducing yourself. Next up, Mr. Bobby Jacobs with Thread. Give us a little bit about yourself, what your company does, and some success stories, please.
Sure. Thanks, Roddy. Been in the space a little bit. Got to be with LionGuard for a while. I think, Roddy, that's where we first connected.
Yep.
Joined Thread about a year ago. We're definitely a bit of a newer vendor to the space. Like a lot of great vendors came out of an MSP ourselves, solving problems we experienced. Big picture, we help MSPs provide a magical experience to their customers and their technicians. The title of this is the future of the MSP space, right? I think a lot of that gets into how MSPs provide service. Like, what's the standard of service today? Phone and email are pretty antiquated. I don't know a lot of people that like it. I love using chat for support, especially through Uber and places where I get free gift cards when I get support, right? But if it's an automated bot, I don't love it. And so we help MSPs, again, provide a magical experience by having another way to connect right inside Microsoft Teams or Slack, so the end user can chat. The MSP can support it through their PSA and current systems. We also do a bunch of stuff with AI.
That's an understatement. We do a bunch of stuff with AI.
It's just the focus of what we do. So Charlie gets to say hey, we start with automation and it's freaking awesome. We're yeah, you do need to focus on this magical experience before you can use our AI. But thanks, Roddy. I mean, to your point, we were featured in the Microsoft Build conference earlier this year. We did a case study with Microsoft and Coca-Cola and Al Jazeera on how we're using OpenAI. Some of the big stuff, we're writing time entries automatically. So when you talk about where we're seeing success, we help one of our partners save 300 hours a month just from clicking a button to write their time entries for them.
Yeah.
Again, that's not the core focus, right? The magical experience of stopping churn, helping customers communicate with you that maybe don't love the way you're working with them right now. And then when we see people using chat for communication, see about a 30% decrease in time to resolution, because of the time to response, because of the lower friction. So, I
That's
may have
awesome.
gone on a little long,
Yeah.
but
No,
I'm
you're
excited
good.
about it.
Yeah, and as someone who helped build out an operations side for an MSP, we absolutely love time entries. Like that is, if you could just give me more time entries, it runs the business, right? We understand that, like, we need to know why we're spending on time and everything else, but like we're writing that up for documentation purposes and also like billing purposes, or whether or not your company's which clients are being efficient, or which ones are burning most of your time. Like that's important stuff. We just hate writing those time entries.
You love having it, you hate doing it.
Exactly. It's good once it's done. But thank you. That's awesome information. And last but definitely not least, Mr. Jared Epstein, if you could give us a little information about MS Networks and what do you guys do, and where are you having success in the industry?
Thank you, Roddy, and happy to be here. So again, I'm Jared Epstein. I'm our director of channel for MS Networks. I've been in the MSP space for a couple of years now. Initially with data, was able to be a part of that journey of growth, and came over to MS Networks to be a part of the journey of growth here. MS Networks is a spinoff from a EMEA-based on-prem firewall vendor that has been around since 2016, and in Europe, only working through the MSP channel. Timus came to the US in 2021 and really started going to market just about 6 months ago in the US after doing some product hardening and market evaluation, but also only through MSPs. And what we do is, I guess, going off of the Gartner acronym of SSE, so Security Service Edge. I see all four of us are either not in a traditional office. So rather than just having a firewall, security is not based around just the four walls of a traditional office anymore. So we're essentially a cloud firewall with a VPN alternative that can protect users no matter where they are. In terms of, and simplifying it there, and in terms of the success story, as a newer vendor in the space, I'd say a major success story that comes to mind is one of the first MSPs we started working with was two gentlemen who left an MSP that had been around for many years and started their own MSP. And they came on and were some of our first testers. And this was just about 6 months ago. And within that time frame, they've grown, and during that time, they've added Timus to all of their clients. But in that time, we've watched their success grow. We watched them become more and more successful. And in that time, they've added 3 staff members. And what comes along with that is obviously a lot more endpoints for them and being able to grow with them. And so we're looking for partners and being along to grow with our MSPs.
Awesome.
So happy to be here. Thank you, Roddy.
Oh, no problem. No, it's good kickoff. We've got some really great, vendors here. But now comes the fun part where we ask questions and get to pick your brain. But you kind of touched on the first question I had here, Jared. You're talking about how, tradition, like what we thought of traditionally as an office space, right? 4 walls, people in it, all working behind a single firewall or a single product. And, that's probably no longer the case, especially after COVID and the shift to remote work. So like, if you feel free to kick this off, but like, how has the I guess increase in the in remote work and how that has become kind of the norm now, and we starting to see more traditional brick and mortar type businesses move to having full-time remote workers. Like, how's that affecting the MSP and vendor space?
Yeah, thank you. And I think for all businesses, whether you're an MSP or a vendor or an end client that's being serviced by either of the two, it's affecting. Well, and I think it's also living in New York City. A lot of my friends are back in the office, whether 3 days a week or 5 days a week. But one constant is that everyone's working from anywhere. If you're in the office, you're taking your laptop home, and that workday doesn't really end at 5 o'clock. You're usually probably continuing to work from a personal device or a work device, after hours and from a different location. So I think there's 2 major components that every business owner is thinking about. One is productivity. What are my users doing if they're remote or hybrid? How are they accessing corporate data while they're not in the office? And how do I keep that secure? How do I actually manage and see what people are doing and protect myself as a business owner? I think I know that that's affecting MSPs, vendors, and the clients that we all serve.
Yeah, definitely. And Charlie, I know Roost. Y'all have remote workers because one of your best and brightest lives about 5 minutes from me.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
get to see him on the regular. How's that affecting? How's that remote workforce working for you guys? And how do you feel like MSPs now are starting to sell products to clients that are either 100% remote, never had a physical office?
Yeah, I think from a vendor side, certainly, when you talk about like, somebody like, Tim and, you get people that are seasoned, that have been doing this for a bit, um, I think it's a bit easier, right? They're a bit comfortable with it. They've kind of transitioned over to the way that we work. And, ultimately it's pretty straightforward to find out, what the results look like. I know, Bobby could probably tell you on the sales side, it's definitely a bit more challenging, especially if you're looking to bring in junior salespeople. So it's a lot harder to train somebody and get them up to speed. We would always, it's not a brilliant trick, but when you're in the office, you would just sandwich the new guy between two seasoned reps, and it's like osmosis. They hear them talking all day. They get the pitch down faster. They're able to ask people questions. So, certainly getting that. I think there's something missing there. And then I do think for young people that, like personal touch and being there, and this is being said from somebody, I've worked for remote like this for 25 years. And the way that I made up for it is, I'd made sure I travel. So I was in the corporate office. I made sure I was in there monthly, meeting people, making sure people see you. So, that's the one thing I'd say for anybody that's going to listen to this call is like, you have to figure out how to become visible because it's very easy to be invisible. And then what happens is somebody at my level, I only look at stats then. I don't work with you. I just look at stats. I look at, go back to the number of calls, number of touches, ultimately, you bring in sales. I think, everyone will say, you could kind of do whatever you want to a degree. But I think those are the challenges. As far as MSPs go, we've seen everybody with I think we accelerated the move to cloud for a lot of people. I would say talking beforehand, people are always a bit more hesitant. I just came from a data protection company. I think, we know that was always a thing like, hey, you got to be real careful. I know, Jared, coming from Datto. But now people are, kind of leaning in a bit because they're like, you know what, I wasn't planning on doing this, but if I don't do it, I'm going to be out of business.
Yeah. Yeah. We see, going back to your comment about, people in the office, on the MSP space, that's what we used to do. Like it was 4 hours of training on whatever product we had and 4 hours of shadowing, where you sat there with an engineer or you sat with help desk. And so how do you help recreate that feeling, or how do you help recreate that knowledge transfer? Bobby?
Too, Roddy, is, depending on what role you have here, everybody's different. You have a lot of introverts, on the team. And so the more they're spending time alone, sometimes that's not good either.
Yeah, introverts in the tech space? Charles,
yeah.
You're talking nonsense.
I don't want to offend anybody. I have some guys on the sales team that are.
Yeah.
Which you'd be shocked to hear, but they like to make money.
For sure. Bobby, any comments or questions or anything about the remote work?
I think one of the, from the MSP's perspective, you have a site contact, you have the person that either bought from you or was your first implementer and you work with really closely. That person's typically a bit nerdier. They love all the stuff you love. They love all these resources you provide. When your customers in an office together, everything can funnel through them. And someone can walk over to their desk and say, hey, my keyboard doesn't work. And then that guy lets you know. Or they open it, the average end user is not going to go open a ticket. They're going to be like, I don't remember where that email address. I don't remember where that is. Like, how do I find you? When things are remote, I think that's where like you have a 99% CSAT score, but your customer churns because all those other people, the 95% of people can't go tap the guy on the shoulder anymore. They're just not getting help. They don't know how to reach you. They have a bad experience. Mm-hmm. And it's way harder for the MSP. So I think providing service to a remote force, giving that average end user away, that's like the biggest thing. I talk communication all day. Think about that average end user. Don't just think about the people you talk to the most, because that average end user gets mad, screams, and all of a sudden you lost a customer, right? And you had never talked to that person before.
Yeah, one of the silver linings we looked at, right, on the MSP side was, if you transition to remote work and your in-house IT staff is now remote, then how are you differentiating an MSP service from a remote IT workforce, right? Like that's a wedge there we get as an MSP. Like if you start to talk about that, like you don't get the main, I think, wall for us getting into was like you can't replicate that in-house IT staff who, everybody knows their birthday, their friends, they have, the water cooler conversations. Like it's hard to recreate that on the MSP side, but a shift to remote IT workforce, I mean, that's definitely that gives you a leg up on the MSP side. You have all the tools, you have everything you can to kind of wedge yourself in that space and get into some spaces you may not have been in before, which kind of dovetails, I guess, a little bit into how AI is starting to impact, all right, like how we deliver services. And Bob, if you want to kick this off, because we talked a little bit about AI before, how's AI being like changing how you develop products and your marketing strategies, and is that the new table stakes for vendors, right? Where you have to have, I hate using the word table stakes.
I use it a lot. I get made fun of for using table stakes.
Like I used to have a game we play where someone said tech debt. That was how many drinks you had to have later. But like, is AI now the new, like, you have to have that to enter the market as a vendor?
Yeah, I don't know if you have to have it, but I do think, and Jared may enjoy this going to IT Nation this year, I think it may be the first year there's something that's not cybersecurity that there's like more of, right? Like there might be more AI conversation vendors than there are cybersecurity vendors. And I think it's just going to be overwhelming. Do you have to have it? I don't think so. If you're providing value, like awesome. Whatever that is. I think it may even be refreshing for someone not to talk about AI, sooner than later. But I do think like how it's impacting things, you think about time entries or things that people have to have, but they don't like doing and aren't necessarily customer facing. Like that's where Roost crushes it. Like so many simple processes you just have over and over. Like Thread and Roost both automatically set the priority on tickets, right? Really simple thing, but hugely impactful. So I think you'll start to see some of those roles, like dispatch, for example, move to be heavily supported with AI. Maybe it's not getting rid of dispatch, but now dispatch, 90% of what they used to do is supported with AI. And they're just like a genius who's pointing things the right direction and checking that things are right. I think there's a lot of roles like that that'll be supported and made more efficient. For the MSP.
And we go. I'm gonna hand off to Charlie in a second, but one of the conversations I think I had with Tim at Roost years ago was about how can AI and automation help quality of life for your tech, right? Like they don't want to get burned out putting in, updating documentation and putting in ticket notes and all the stuff that's like them not being able to put on their Superman cape and saving the day, right? Like I realized that a long time ago. Like we had some techs who just did not like doing hated doing the paperwork. After the ticket was closed, they just like coming in, saving the day, putting on their Superman cape, and that's what made them feel good. That's what drove them. And like, so how do you improve that quality of life for them? But that's something, that Roost, Charlie, has been working on. Like, how do you feel? How's AI and automation impacting, I guess, you guys directly?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we talk about, right? So everyone thinks automation and they think, well, the robots are coming, you could get rid of everything, no one's going to have a job. And we actually look at it a bit differently where, just like the both of you said, if you're doing it, if you're that guy that's closing the same ticket every day, 100 a day, you got to be getting to a boiling point, right? Where you're doing, it's just so repetitive, especially some that wants to like grow in their career. As we all know on the sales side, right? It's, we'll hit, this is the end of the quarter and we'll all be back at zero, right? So if you don't stop and make your adjustments and changes mid-flight, you're never going to catch up, right? So that's the one thing. I'm sure Bobby, like as I do the same thing, and Jared, like you're looking at what's working, what's not. You don't wait till the end of the year to determine because we don't even get time then, right? It starts again, and that's the same thing with the tickets. So one of the things that we have out there right now is just what we consider kind of an AI ticket bundle that's doing what Bobby said, where we are looking at the content of the ticket. And so we're not just basically looking at what the problem is. We're also looking at the sentiment in the ticket, leveraging AI, which we, as we all know, a lot of times we do have those, basically people looking at those tickets to say, hey, here's where it goes. We could do that right through AI. So, if all of a sudden we had this meeting, Bobby's machine wasn't working 2 hours ago, he'd put in a ticket and say, I'm going to be on a webinar in 2 hours. That's going to be a bigger deal, right? That's going to get basically boosted up to the top. So those are some of the things that we're looking at for. But, AI in general, we've all been around long enough. There's always the buzzword in our space. And as soon as it comes out, I almost like a game to find out who doesn't have AI on their website right now. And it could be anything. It could be a guy selling, hard drives, and I'll talk about AI.
Yeah. No, it's one of those things too. Like I was in my head, I was laughing at myself. It's like, can I trick the AI into making a higher priority ticket by putting all caps and like 20 exclamation points at the end of it? It's like, can I trick AI into thinking that's an emergency? We talk about like our own clients, and their language and understanding, when we have attorneys who had like deadlines, like court filings and things like that, like those were priority driven. Like we had to make sure that if they miss a deadline, the worst thing you want to do is have a judge yell at them. And that was that was like just a bad day for them, and that was going to turn into a bad day for us. So Jared, any comments on this? How's AI affecting you guys, and what do y'all think too? Is how is this going to develop in the future for the MSP space?
And coming at this from a bit of a different perspective, because I know Roost and Thread are really predicated on automation, and I know that AI is so deeply ingrained on kind of the cores of what your tools do. This week at Timis, we've been having a kind of an executive offsite discussing Q4. Charlie was talking about preparation and always kind of being a step ahead. And a large portion, we had a whole session about how can we use AI in development, sales, marketing, and through every role to enhance our days and become more knowledgeable. ChatGPT-4, they just made the update to go back to the open internet. So we can have kind of live data funneling through the premium ChatGPT, not going through 2021. So for the sales teams, understanding what does the competition look like, how to speak to something, how to understand kind of little things even that MSPs are doing to understand what our partners are going through on a day-to-day basis and just become more informed. And then put that into content, our learning, and our just really putting that into our day-to-day is something that was top of mind. We've had about 3 hours of talk back and forth about that today, just on sales, marketing, and our day-to-days within our respective roles. And within our product, I think there's two big things that were brought up that were things that I personally hadn't thought about coming from the sales side. And the developers were talking about how can we use AI and put that into our product and use, leveraging that within our code. And then there's the whole other component of now, again, this is a lot of this information within ChatGPT and these other machine learning tools are now public. So what do we release? What do we not release from a proprietary information standpoint? And then how do we integrate this to make our product better, but also to make, keep our product the way that it is? And that delicate balance, I guess, is the best way to say it. And that hearing that debate from the more technical minded people within the team was interesting on my end. But I'm a believer that we're all adapting, and also amen to Charlie, to your point about the buzzword of the day, and kind of every website you're going to is mentioning it to some degree.
It's that marketing. It's a marketing term now, right? Like I remember we used to have the debate over like machine learning versus AI. Like where do you draw the line at? But so how would you define, like I see JP in the comments, like how would you define AI? Like what is that? If we're gonna nail it down and say that we can't not to, we see marketing terms use it all the time. Like what is AI to you? Like Jared, if you want to kind of dovetail on your.
Yeah, and the way that we break it down, or the way that I break it down in my mind, I think ChatGPT opened up a whole world to me that I personally had never thought of and was out there. And I think that it expands to everyone who, from the vendor space to MSPs to our family members who are not working in the IT space. So I think there's the machine learning part, which I know our development team is learning on the back end, and how that works within the Timis product is understanding who the user is, what their behaviors are, and how that adapts over time, and how our cloud firewall can expand and contract based on what the machine is learning about that person, and allowing them to, and how it's allowing them to act within the corporate network based on previous behavior and what it might be indicative of what they might be doing in the future. The way that I think about it as more of a sales-minded role is I'm thinking about AI as scrubbing the internet and scrubbing just everything that it possibly can to give me as much information as I can in an accurate, concise form.
Yeah. Charlie, what about you? What do you think? What's AI? If you had to like just put a definition to it that everyone has to now listen to, they have to listen to Charlie's definition. What would you say it was?
Yeah, but I think it's only as good as, to Jared's point, is the information that it has, right? So if anybody's tried to use it here, depending on what you're looking to get to, you'll get to it. I do think that some of the concerns on security and blocking it out, we've heard this countless times where we're going to stop something, right? I mean, you look at if bring your own device was something that we stopped, BlackBerry we'd be walking around Blackberries right now. Right. So, we aren't going to involve. We just have to figure out how we use it. I know for us, for AI is just, how do we kind of really just, it helps our automation when we're looking at some of these things. But, you also have to be security minded, which is be careful with what information you're actually giving it. Right. So it's looking at a ticket. It doesn't have access to, their actual data. All it really is looking at something that, frankly, if it's an email, it's out there anyhow. So it's not the end of the world. So it's just being smart about that. And it's a way, I look at AI as a way for us to really appear bigger as a team. One of the things that, I always did when you build out these small team and small companies is, you need to make yourself, you need to be everywhere, right? And you need to be very responsive to things. And especially when it comes to MSPs. MSP is probably I was so blessed to find this as a channel. I can be more thankful. But they also are very entrenched. As we know, they're a big community. So if you're not on this stuff as a vendor, it doesn't matter how good the product is. If your response times aren't good, you'll get slammed for that. We all see that in all the Reddit posts and everything that we see out there, how things are changing. I think that's where, for me, AI is going to be big. It's just a way for us to use that artificial intelligence to really expand out what we do as a company with the resources that we have, which would make sense as an automation company. You wouldn't expect me to have 100 people offshore sitting there typing stuff in, right?
Maybe one day you'll have.
Yeah, I don't think we need to do that with what we have here.
And Bobby, for you, like, how do you help ease, concerns from MSPs who are worried about security of everything that this AI is ingesting and learning, and how are y'all working to help ease those concerns, I guess, or at least prove that AI can be as secure as traditional MSP services?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is partnering with OpenAI and Microsoft or Watson or whoever you're using as a vendor. Like, we are very close with OpenAI. We have an open Teams chat with our Microsoft people. We're in their startup program. A really simple thing, if you're looking at an AI vendor, and it's using OpenAI, ask if the data is hosted in Azure AD. Because if it's not an Azure AD, then it's going to be reprocessed. And that, as an MSP, if you're just going and getting ChatGPT for your team, make sure that you have the right things in place where your data is not going to be reprocessed, or you're going to be Samsung and all of the codes on how you're building your chips are going to be posted publicly, right? And that wasn't the people's fault. That was Samsung's fault for allowing them to do that. I hope that's not recorded and I don't get a lawsuit from Samsung. But putting the data in Azure AD, that's what we do. That's part of what we do on the security side with AI, so it doesn't get reprocessed. The AI is able to read it, it's able to make decisions and suggest things, but the data is not going back into the bigger large language model. We have a security document outlining how that works and how the data is not being reprocessed. And I think ultimately for MSPs, working with vendors who are taking on the security piece of it so that they don't have to as much, not to mention the cost. We were talking to someone yesterday at Microsoft about some of their new licensing that's going to come out around OpenAI, and the minimums are going to be really high. And so it probably is going to prevent a lot of small business from using it themselves. And so they'll need to go through vendors that have the larger scale and can handle the security. We try to do as much work on that side as we can, so the MSP, one, doesn't have to, and two, can trust the security.
Yeah. Speaking of security, there's been a big push too from the White House specifically about better protecting, or having software vendors and developers, better protect their software and have some, put the liability back on software vendors. So how are y'all dealing with the potential coming of regulatory and compliance requirements coming down from y'all? Charlie, we'll kick it off to you first. Like, what are y'all seeing come down the pipeline, not only for the vendor side, but the MSP space on the compliance and regulatory side?
Yeah, this has been kind of a long time coming, right? We've been, I guess, warned about this. Can we clean up, the MSP side of it, fast enough, put some standards in place so that the government didn't have to get involved. So I think, we kind of all know that. We've seen what's happened out there. We know that the MSPs are a target, right? You go after an MSP, you get access to 200 small businesses as opposed to, doing them one at a time. I think for us, it's about making sure that we're looking at everything that we're doing. We're in the process for SOC 2, things that we know we need to do anyhow. So these are best practices. I don't think I think it's stuff that, like JP's putting out there, we all have to be thinking about whether there's a regulation or not. I mean, the fact that, you look at patching, how many people could have prevented a breach if they patched properly, which, Roddy, you've been doing this long enough. It almost seems absurd.
Yeah.
Right. That, RDP, is something that's not new. As an old guy who's probably, certainly before maybe some of your time, right, that you even heard of it or were involved with it, but it's been out there forever. You look at some of the base and it still continues to go on. So, this best practice approach, I think that's exactly the way that we're looking at it. You look at, guys that, certainly getting in, pen testing, like there's all these things that we know are best practices, but everyone gets cheap. It's kind of like the flood insurance or, hey, I'm not going to get collision on the car. I only take it out once in a while. And
it's risk management at the end of the day, right? Like some people are really good at it and can see what's going to happen and are really good at figuring out where to spend the most money. And some people are just horrible at it because they just don't want to. It's easy to have RDP open to the outside world to allow your accountant to get. I mean, we did an incident response months ago that was just specifically that RDP open to the outside world so the accountant could get in and do work, and it compromised 140-ish workstation client that we had to go in and clean up. I mean, it was rough, but like best practice would dictate, at least put MFA or put it behind a VPN or, don't expose those services to the outside world. That's just not happening. And then we see things like, MGM, like let's like talk about MGM. That happened, or the news that broke, what was it yesterday, before yesterday, about Johnson Controls. Same thing, like the exfiltration of data, all their ESXi hosts were hit, like those, that's happening, right? So that's going to eventually, you're going to see some action getting taken, right? We look at like NIST, for example, and revision 3 that's coming up. And one of the things that I saw in some of the preview documents was the need for a third-party assessment. Like they're actually starting to say you need a third party to come in and make sure that this is going on, right? So Jared, like for you guys, like what are y'all seeing on y'all side of the world of like what's going on with regulation, not even in the US, but everywhere else?
Yeah. I think the one thing I want to echo from Charlie's point of view, we've been hearing it since I haven't been in the channel as long as you, Charlie, but from the very, from my first day in the channel, maybe my first event that I went to, there was a presentation hearing like, if we don't do this, like the government's going to step in.
Yeah.
This is on the MSPs and it's on the vendors and it's on all of us. And I've watched like the channel evolve from, again, working in the backup and disaster recovery space and at Datto before. Some of the first MSPs I'd work with would be like, hey, like I just need to check the box for HIPAA. I need to check the box for FINRA or whatever compliance box. I need to check the data. And like, I'm not a compliance guy. I'm a tech guy. Does this check that box for me? If I get an audit on that front, am I going to be able to be okay in here? And to now, fast forwarding, we approach the end of 2023. I think MSPs have to be experts on compliance. Their clients are asking it, and MSPs are being a lot more diligent in terms of looking at vendors and is this vendor really going to check that box for me, or are they just saying it at a high level to get my business, and am I going to get burned on the back end? And from TMIS internally, we have SOC 2 and ISO in the US, but we also have being in EMEA, having GDPR and compliance is something that's talked about every day. Talked about not just by the MSPs, but also the clients and their cyber insurance. I think I don't know how many MSPs are on here who have a client who've had a client that have had a breach, and then the cyber insurance claim wasn't filled. That's something that comes up, I'd say, multiple times a week. So on our end, I'm trying to make sure that we're not the root cause of it, making sure that we're protecting our MSPs and our clients to the highest degree, but understanding that security is a layered approach, and it's not just one solution that's going to accomplish what the end client needs to really be protected.
Yeah, it's almost like compliance needs to become a part of a culture, not just a bolt-on that you do because you have to check some boxes off. The ones I've seen do compliance right, the MSPs who do it right, are walk in and just and I mean JP's in the chat. He'll tell you he does compliance. Like there's very few MSPs who can do it right, and are in that space. But the ones who are doing it right are making a killing. And they're, it's especially when you start dealing with Department of Defense clients who are staring down the barrel of CMMC, right? Like that is, that's going to be a requirement. It's one of those things. It's not like HIPAA and high tech or some of the other numerous ones like the FCC safeguards, where it's like post incident, let's go see what happened. Like CMMC is, you want a Department of Defense contract, you have to check all these boxes off. This is before you even can touch CUI. So we're starting to see that kind of shift now of, people who are saying, all right, well, if I want to stay in this space and I want to get those government contracts, I have to do these requirements. Bobby, what are you seeing? What's going on? What's going on in your neck of the woods in the great state of Texas?
Yeah, in Texas, getting the government involved isn't typically a hot topic, or it is a hot topic, normally not popular. But I think the government helping provide guidance around these things is super helpful. And the MSP, I remember being at a session Kyle from Hunters did like 4 or 5 years ago where he was telling MSPs, like, please push your vendors harder. Please ask them about their security and make them show you their security. And I thought that session was awesome, but it's a lot of work, right? Like you're already overworked as an MSP. Now you're telling me to go do more work and put more things on my plate. I think what we're seeing with like ConnectWise doing with their certified integrations, and a lot of vendors have those types of things that can say like, here's how we approach it. We're doing this work for you. Like we've been pen tested by ConnectWise. We've been pen tested by Slack. ConnectWise has done code reviews of us every year and certified that we're a certified integration. We won best certified integration at IT Nation last year, but a ton of vendors have those certified integrations. Last year at IT Nation, they put like a sticker down on the floor in front of all their certified integrators. I don't know if they're going to do that this year, but I think those types of things like greatly serve MSPs, but I don't think that we let people know about it. Like I guess most MSPs don't know what it means to be a ConnectWise certified integrator. And if you do, then it's like, okay, I don't have to go do all the security work now because ConnectWise has done it for me. So I think as much as vendors can take it on ourselves to do those types of things and just show the MSP, the better it is for everybody.
Yeah. I remember years ago hearing people talk about like make sure you doing your supply chain risk questionnaire with your vendors, and like talking about SOC 2. And I remember having a conversation with someone's like, well, most MSPs can't read a SOC 2 report. And I was like, I know, I come from a financial background. I was like, most can't. But this is where we start, right? We make sure the vendors get a SOC 2, and then enough people who can understand and read one. That's how the industry starts to mature a bit, right? But we have to start somewhere. One of the things that I always love, one of my favorite sayings, is that sometimes as technical people, we have to make sure all the lights are green before we leave the garage and go to work, and that's not a way of. We can't do that. We have to start somewhere. And look, the vendor space has done a tremendous job of reassuring us on the MSP side of like, hey, we're doing a SOC 2. This is what we're doing with your data. Like we've become a lot more transparent about that, I want to say, and it's just a sign of the industry starting to mature and starting to say that we have to start putting these safeguards in place. It's no longer a let's go get a steak and have a beer and sign this contract. The feel like that was I remember those days. It's not like that anymore. Now it's like, cool, you can get me a steak, but we're going to talk a little bit more. And we have you fill out, this 8-page, supply chain risk and vendor questionnaire. I mean, it's it's just as an industry where we're going.
I think with, Jared hit on it, Roddy, where, the tick box method of doing things, we can't do that anymore, right? I mean, if you look at I always start out in cybersecurity was that, even like large enterprises had that 80-20 rule, right? They tried to cover 80% of, basically what they felt were the breaches and concerns, because they knew to get the extra 20%, it probably cost them, every point would cost them probably more than they spent on the 80%. I'd say, a lot of people aren't even close to, I don't know what you guys think. Do we think we're even at 80% in some cases?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Not even remotely close.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
don't think so.
So I think the more we move away from that, like just ticking a box, like I know cyber insurance was great. I think it was 2-3 pages, and you just literally just checked if you had it. There was no proof. I mean, so moving to where we are today, I think, this is just the evolution. I don't think it's a problem. And JP's been hitting on a lot of points just with AI is like problems you got to address it.
Yeah, I remember the cyber liability questionnaires where it's like, do you have AV? Do you have a firewall? Do you patch your operating system? And that's pretty much it. It was like 5 questions, and now it's a whole process. It's like it's basically going through an assessment. And I've seen some where they even talk about corporate management, like how are you doing governance for your business? Right? Like they start to ask questions about IT steering committee, how often you meet, how much money you spend on your IT budget. Like they're really getting some in-depth questions. So it's been really interesting to see even just how the insurance industry has changed the MSP space too, right? Like, that was a big driver for us on the MSP side of selling cybersecurity packages and doing those upsells was, you can spend another $2,000 or $3,000, or maybe not even get cyber liability insurance, or you can spend X amount of dollars with us and we've got you covered, right? So like those kind of changes, like those non-government requirements that kind of change the space. But let's talk a little bit too about the future of the MSP space in general. Like, where do you see growing liabilities and risks? Like for the MSP side, are you seeing mergers and acquisitions causing a lot of issues or causing some big changes? And what about let's say my $10 word, which is tech debt. Let's talk about tech debt. Like, we have MSPs who are coming on board who are cloud first, who don't have all that old infrastructure and legacy systems. Like, what does that look like? What does the next 3 years look like for the MSP space? Bobby, if you want to kick it off.
Yeah, I think real time is a big thing that when you talk about tech debt, a lot of that gets back to like my stuff takes forever to load, my workflows don't run for 10 minutes, I can't see things as soon as they happen. That's a lead into Thread. Our backend tool is a real-time interface on top of the PSA, so it allows those people who have been on, I don't want to say legacy systems, but systems that maybe aren't like the brand new, like instant updating things. It allows them to keep their infrastructure, keep all the work they've done with their consultants to get the PSA in a great place, and gives them a real-time thing on top of it. I think across the board, just having integrations that work faster so people can work faster, they can serve their customers quicker, they can get things done. My wife works for a Fortune 500 company. She's an accountant. She spends half her day waiting for spreadsheets to load, and they just won't get her a new laptop. Like if they got her a better laptop, she'd probably be 50% more efficient. And that's like, that didn't used to be a big deal because the spreadsheets weren't as big and, it's pretty straightforward. But everyone wants to do things faster. So anything that's slowing you down is just drag. Getting real time, I think, is a huge opportunity. Yeah.
Jared, your thoughts?
I think there's so many different angles to the next 3 years in the MSP space, just because the last 3 years have been so different, and the last 3 years before that were so different. And to touch on the M&A side of things, I think it's been refreshing on some levels, a lot of levels, to see some of the partners I've worked with in the past either kind of sell their businesses into conglomerate type MSPs or different forms of mergers, but then also seeing a younger salesperson in a tech come up with the money to buy the MSP and come and basically take over the business with their refresh mindset. So we've seen a lot of younger MSPs kind of come into the market and say, this is how we're trying to do things. I've also seen a lot of different forms of M&A, which has been interesting. Like I know like the New Charter Group and some other ones that are similar, where you can sell your company in, but then and basically keep your name, keep working, remain agnostic in terms of your vendor stack, but you have the purchasing power of us and let's say 20 other MSPs that can basically dictate to vendors kind of what we need and also get the knowledge on the back end to security compliance, as we talked about before, because one constant that I've seen in the space is that nobody has a lot of time. So being able to have like a larger resource group behind you to fill you in on compliance, security, how to go about those things, and which vendors to go to, and how to reach them is a major component. And I think that follows on to the liabilities and risks. I think MSPs some of them are still trying to be like, I'm trying to learn how to get to my clients to the cloud. I'm trying to learn to get my clients to adopt MFA. I'm trying to be more automated in what I'm doing. And now I'm being told I need to sell this. I need to sell this security solution. I need to think about this compliance measure. I think, lack of time and liability on all those fronts, MSPs can't keep up because of lack of time and the dynamic environment that we're in. I think all M&A liabilities and cloud is just it's evolving, and I think 3 years from now it's going to look very different, and I'm interested to see where it's going to go.
Awesome. Yeah, Charlie, thoughts?
Yeah, I think the big thing, and you guys covered some great points, and I agree with you. I think the other thing is the big dogs in the space, right? The big vendors that want to basically own the MSP outright, right? They want everything to go through them. They want to buy all the tools. I think the push to move some of their tools, the traditional RMM PSA, to a cloud or a the new great version, move you off of what you had. I think that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And that probably is that 2-3 year time frame, right? Because as we know, like the first iteration is. I wouldn't say it's an MVP, but it's probably, close. And there's not as much, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, I guess, for you to do that big shift. But it's going to be interesting to see how that helps out some of the, let's say second tier RMM PSA vendors where, if you're telling me I have to move to something, well, I think, Roddy, you could certainly speak from an MSP standpoint. You don't just move because I tell you to move, right? It's a completely different product. It's a different animal. So now you have to do a whole POC. Well, if an MSP is going to do that, one thing I learned is they're smart enough to go, okay, that's fine. We got to move off that. I'm going to look at 3 other vendors.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to be interesting to see what that shift looks like, because I do think we're kind of leaning, guys like us are very much, the smaller guys are more of that like community, we're really kind of entrenched with the MSP community. And I think, depending on how they go, they have to be careful that they don't disenfranchise.
Yeah. I mean, like whenever we would scour and look for a new vendor that can kind of fill some gaps or fill some controls we're not meeting, and we loved them and they were a great company. Next thing you know, they're being bought out by a larger company. We're not going to name any names, and you're just like, come on, man! Like it felt like it was a constant grind of like, we find a good vendor, we help build them up. We work with them on might be on their partner advisory panel or give them feedback, new features, and then they get bought out by a big company, and then like within 3 years, they go from that community focus to more like, all right, how do we affect the bottom line more? And it's like that constant grind in the MSP space, I find, but that's kind of segues into the next question is like, how can us, like the MSP side of things, like what's the best way we can help you out, Charlie? Like whenever we're sitting there going like, I love your product, I love what you do. What can we do to help out the vendor side? Because sometimes I feel like the vendors want that feedback. They need that feedback. They want to know how they could better improve their product. Like what can we do to help you guys out?
Yeah, I think you hit it on a sense from just the overall community is, this is, when we look at this, and I learned this early on, is we're looking to partner, right? This isn't, I don't think anybody here goes out to just sell, hey, I got this, great tool, buy it, here's the price, right? We know that we have to provide value. We're not selling anything that sits on a shelf. So we love our community. Our community is really awesome. Between Reddit, we have people come to our defense. We have people answering questions before we can get to it. I think so. Continuing to do those things, and just remember that it is a big community. There's plenty of MSPs out there. If you need something, come directly to us. I mean, our CEO is somebody that is on Reddit. We use Discord. which my kids still goof on me when they saw I was on Discord. My son's a gamer, and he's like, "Why would you have Discord?" I'm like, "Well, this is the way, our tech people. This is, a great way for them to communicate." So, we are just here. Anything, any issues that you have, any concerns, how to make things better. We are open for it. And every Friday we have a open mic, which as a salesperson scares the heck out of me. You'd probably be scared too, Jared, because we don't take questions like on chat and then filter them. It is all real time. And that has been awesome. Our CEO, CTO, head of our support's all on there. So I would continue to do that. If you want to look at a demo, go to roost.io. Or if you, ultimately, if you want to see us, we'll be at the big shows coming up, DattoCon next week, IT Nation, and I think you guys are all going to Next Gen, right? So we'll see you there as well.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah. Jared, what do you think? Like as the community starts to you want to form that community and you want to form that relationship, what can we do to help build that relationship out?
Yeah, I think the $1 million question that every vendor wants to hear, and they want to get these answers from their partners. And Charlie hit the nail on the head again with, like, we want to partner with you, and in order to do that, like, tell us how we can enable you, and not just from a sales sense. Like, how can we enable you to be successful with not just our tool, but the other tools that you're using within your stack, in terms of being more automated, being more efficient internally, and don't be shy with it. We know that, and one thing about the MSP community we've learned is you're not shy. But we don't know if you don't tell us.
Yeah.
So when people hear enablement, they often think right to sales, but more on, like, how can we enable you to be more successful with our tool in the back end, not just ours. If you have a contact within a different vendor, and on the support side, one MSP was like, "Hey, I don't want to have to email you. I don't want to have to call you. Like, how can we be more efficient on the support end? Like, can you just add me to a Slack channel with some of a few of the support guys, and we'll get real time answers. Because if I'm in your product and I have a question, I can't wait for you to answer the phone and wait for me to be put on hold or wait for an email." And little things, and we put it together in 10 minutes. So little things like that. I mean, how can we help you be more successful as a vendor?
Yeah, I think success looks a little bit different for each MSP. That was one thing. Whenever I served on some partner advisory panels or councils, whichever you want to call them, and then one thing was like, how do we help the MSP feel comfortable with the tool they're using, right? Because you have always try to put MSPs in like 3 different buckets. There's the early adopters, like the ones who have like, oh, this makes perfect business sense, and they jump all in. And then I find most MSPs fall in that, all right, well, I'm gonna give this to my client, but I want to test it out first. I want to run it through the ringer. I want to make sure that I understand everything from head to tail on this product before I put it in at my client, because I don't want to have any disruptions. Like, I feel like a lot of MSPs like that cautious optimism, right? Like, this seems like a great tool, but I want to run it through the ringers. And you have the guys who are in the back who are just like, I need to be forced to use this tool. Like, you're not going to get me to change anything. And you kind of have those stats. So like we were helping some of our vendors better understand those MSPs, right? Like, you're going to get a lot of success off the bat as a vendor with those people who see your product and want to hurry up and get into it. And they want to be like first adopters. And then you're going to hit a lull, and you got to kind of switch from like sales enablement to like product enablement. Like, how do I help the MSPs better understand my product? But Bobby, what are you seeing? What do you think? How can the MSP side help you out?
Yeah. First off, Jared, awesome that your customers want to talk to you in Slack. That's what we do. We can help you handle that and support them well in Slack and Teams. But no, yeah, I mean, what everyone said is right. Like, it's an awesome community. There's no need for more communication. We love communication, but like, we get a lot of feedback. It's awesome. Keep giving us feedback. Talk on Reddit. If you like what any vendor's doing, tell your peers about it. Like, there's a lot of peer groups about it around. All this stuff's expensive for vendors to join, right? Like, if someone's pitching to you in a peer group, they're probably paying $5,000-$10,000 for that, and that comes out of our development money, right? It comes out of, like, we have to price that into our products. So the more that you can naturally tell other MSPs about what any vendor's doing, it's going to help us provide more value to you faster. These opportunities to pay are awesome. I love all the vendors and marketing opportunities in the space. I'm not slamming anybody. I'm just saying, the more you can help vendors that you like grow without spending marketing money, the more they're going to be able to provide more value to you.
Yeah. 100%, 100%. So what part of that too is like we're talking about how the MSP side can help you. How are you finding your fellow vendors work with you? Like if they come to you and they say, "Hey, we want to do a panel like this," do you finding that it's easier or harder for vendors to collaborate together? One of my friends who's in the engineer space, like I was telling him how the MSP space operates, where we have like all these open forums and we all come together, we all talk, and it's like, oh, we don't get that in this industry. Like we're very closed off to our secrets, and we don't say anything. How are y'all finding it, Bobby? Like, how's the vendor collaboration in the space, and what is it? Do you find it's getting easier or harder to work with your fellow vendors?
It's awesome. Yeah, I think it just gets easier and easier. There's an MSP vendor Slack channel that I can pretty much go message anyone in the space. Charlie and I talk on there all the time.
Secret channel, you say?
And it's great. It's and it's all positive, right? It's not like, oh, this guy like stole this deal from me or whatever. It's, hey, let's do a webinar together. Like, hey, let's, hey, I talked to an MSP. They said they needed help with this. I told them about you. Why don't you reach out? We, make a lot of introductions, talk about things that are going on, plan things together. That's why I'm in this space. Like, I love the collaboration.
You feel like it's getting better? Like we're starting to become more friendly in this space,
There's the stuff you're referring to at the high level between the big boys or whatever, but like I think it's always been a very collaborative space. But the Slack and Discord and these types of communication, I think that's what's making it better. I don't think that there's like more desire than there used to be. I think everyone's like loved working together. It's just with like co-branded webinars are just so easy to do.
Yeah,
I think that's what's really awesome.
Yeah, Charlie, you've got a lot of experience in the space. Like, how do you feel it's going or coming?
Well, I think it's awesome. For me, certainly, I seem to the next place I go, I have less of a marketing budget. So it's always, and I always miss the marketing budget I had before I get here. But so you have to make the most of it. So one of the things, like Bobby said, we share things like similar to the way the MSPs will operate, which is, hey, I went to this conference. What do you guys think? They want, did you do it? What was the impact? Did you get a lot out of it? And, we're very upfront and honest. We don't go to bash the conference, but we know, like Bobby said, like 10 grand's a lot of money. And especially now with, if you've gotten any prospectuses on the bigger conferences, they just keep on going up and up and up. Right. So, your budget, if you do 3 of those big conferences, that may be your budget for the year.
And not only that, Charlie, the number of conferences in the industry is going up. Like, I can't tell you the last list I looked at that was like, there's one going on, or sometimes 2 going on every week of conferences.
It's super hard. And that's why, like, ones, we try to share with each other which ones are providing the most value. How does it help you build your brand? Because the ROI is not always, a number.
Yeah.
So, what people think about you. So I think that's been great. And we're pretty upfront with, what's working and what's not. So I think it's been great. And, unless you're in a very crowded space, I think everyone gets along. Like, there's no reason for the 3 of us not to get along. We don't compete.
Yeah. Well, we're getting close to time. So I'm going to go ahead and close it out for us. Jared, if you want to go ahead and close us out, where can MSPs find you? How do we get a trial or demo? How do we find you, Jared, and how do we get in touch with you?
So thank you, Roddy, and it's been great being on the panel today. Thank you for having me. So timusnetworks.com. We are going to be at IT Nation. We have MSP Futures in Miami at the end of October. You could ping me on LinkedIn. Because we only work with MSPs, and we know, as we've talked about, you're going to beat up our tool before you ever would put it in a client's environment. The first thing we want to do is give you some NFR licenses. Make sure it's a technical fit. We'll do a demo, give you those licenses, and help enable you along the way. But thank you all for having me again.
Awesome. Thanks for coming, Jared. Charlie, how do we find you?
Yeah, just Roost.io. We will be, we're doing a bunch of shows, PAX 8 mission briefings, be at DattoCon next week, IT Nation, Next Gen, and certainly reach out to me on LinkedIn and follow Roost.
Awesome. And Bobby, if you want to close us out, how do we find Thread? Where are you going to be? How do we get you?
Getthread.com. You can click book a demo there. I have a pirate hat on LinkedIn. It's Bobby Jacobs. We'll be at all the shows. Actually, at DattoCon, Roost, Thread, few other vendors, CyberFox. We're doing our own passport where you can win a trip to Cuba. So come by our booth at those shows. But yeah, we're pretty easy to find if you want to.
Awesome. Look, Bobby, Charlie, Jared, thank y'all for coming, for talking with us, giving us some information. Hopefully our viewers got a nugget of wisdom out of it. You guys are awesome. Y'all doing some great work out there in the space. We hear a lot of good things about y'all. So to our crowd, thank you for coming. We appreciate you. If there's anything you need from these guys, I'm pretty sure you reach out to them in their preferred social media. They will get back to you. Thank you all. Y'all have a good one. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.